Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unplugged with Taylor, where we discuss 5D principles to help you thrive in a 3D world. I am so excited today because we are here with Carl Andresen. Did I say it right?
You did. Nailed it.
I was telling him my twang is going to mess up his last name. Also, better known as Carl the Crusher. Carl is a researcher of the world's greatest mysteries. He's a filmmaker. He's been on TV shows like History Channel's Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. Carl, thank you for being here. I'm super excited for this.
Thanks, Taylor. It's a pleasure. It's going to be a really fun conversation. We have like a lot of different variety of interesting things that we can talk about and tons of stuff going on even in the news that's like really relevant. So it should be a good conversation.
Absolutely. Oh, that brings me. I'm so excited to chat about the drones. Let's start off with the drones.
Yeah, the drones is a fascinating thing because I think there's layers and layers to it. I was actually going to go to New Jersey. I was supposed to be there today, would have been my first official day of research over all the way over New Year's. But I ended up canceling my flights and everything because I had some friends that are professional remote viewers, and they were like, hey, before you go to New Jersey, you ought to do a remote viewing on what's going on with the drone situation and see how you feel afterwards. And I had a few people on my YouTube channel recommend the same thing in the comments, like, have you remote viewed it yet? And now I'm not like a professional remote viewer, but I have followed the Gateway program, Gateway protocol. I study a variety of different remote viewing protocols, and I've done different versions of it kind of off and on my whole life. But really seriously, over the last like 6 years, I've been training on it with my kind of my own method. So I did a remote viewing on it, and it's really strange. It's like I definitely saw what looked like drones and technology of some kind, and they seemed to be like they were sniffing or smelling like they were looking for something missing. But there's layers to it where there's all these. What I drew was these looked like eyes in the sky that were watching and looking and flying around. And I've showed some of those pictures on my YouTube channel and on TikTok and things like that. And it turns out there's like all these little kids that are sending me pictures that have been drawing the same thing. Like moms have been filming their children, 4-year-olds and stuff, that are drawing eyes in the sky, like they're watching, and they're saying that they're the aliens that are coming. So I don't know. It's really fascinating. I think there are definitely some kind of drones and technology hovering around, but it's really strange that the government and the CIA, Homeland Security, and even the mayors of all the townships, they act like they have no clue what these things are, which seems really, really odd to me. If they don't know what they are, then they should figure it out, or at least admit that they're unidentified flying objects, right? If we don't know what they are, then technically they're UFOs. So it's a strange thing.
So, I definitely want to dive deeper into remote viewing because I personally have so many questions about your process with that. But first, I just want to talk about a couple. You've touched on a few different theories on your channel about what the drones could be. I know one of the theories that's going around is that it is our technology, but the government doesn't necessarily want us to know the extent of the technology we have, and that they are maybe looking for something nuclear, and they also don't want to cause panic, so they're just like, I don't know what it is, but leave it alone. And so that's kind of one common theory. What are your thoughts on that?
I might have started that rumor a little bit. The remote viewing that I did, I mentioned that I did the remote viewing, and as part of it, when I said I thought that these drones that I saw in the remote viewing were looking for something missing, and it seemed like my intuition was yelling at me that it was something radioactive. And in some of the drawings, I even drew what looked like a city. It looked like a tall building with an eye at the top, which I thought might have been like the clock or the ball dropping on New Year's. And then I also drew what looked like the people that were on the ground were suddenly, like in a burst of energy, were suddenly up in the sky. And the way that I drew it kind of looked like like a blast or an explosion or something. So I was a little bit nervous when I posted the video on TikTok. I was like, I don't want to create fear or panic, or I don't want people to think that this is going to come true or anything. And then I woke up the next morning and there was another guy who actually is a government contractor who builds drones for the government and programs AI into the drones and things. And he had also said the same theory, that he thought that the way that these things were flying over New Jersey seemed like they were doing it at night, and they were uh, because they were a type of technology that the government didn't want us to know what they were looking for, which meant to him like they were probably searching for something radioactive. Excuse me. And then that kind of, I think the combination of me talking about it and then him coming out about it went all the way up different channels and got shared so much that it went on the news and then Joe Rogan, and it became like a whole theory that maybe the government was hiding that they lost some radioactive material. So there's that layer of it. But on top of that, there's another layer where people are seeing these orbs and like these plasma phenomena in the sky that look like balls of light that appear and hover around and move really strange. And sometimes multiples appear and then they fly away almost like they're swimming through the sky. And to me, that's a whole extra level of different conscious plasma phenomena that is a living thing in our atmosphere. And there's actually a lot of scientific papers about that, about these living plasma entities. And I believe
I
that as we go outside and more people go out and look up at the sky, we're inadvertently doing a type of meditation that kind of communicates with this phenomena. And so now we're getting global sightings all over the place.
I have so I saw you a video of you talking about this, and it was so interesting to me because within the last 6 months that's happened to me. I live in a high rise building, and I was sitting on my balcony and I'm looking in the sky. It's at nighttime, and there's these green like dancing lights, and I'm like, what is that? And I'm looking at it for a while, and I'm like, that's not a bird. There's no way that's a plane. What the hell is that? And so I stared at it forever. And at one point, it was not super, it was a couple buildings away, like eye level for me. And my heart was pounding because I knew, I'm like, what the hell is that? But something also in my intuition was like, it's not bad. It's not going to hurt you. So I felt this nervousness, but I didn't like run inside. I just sat there and stared at it until my head hurt because I was like, what am I looking at? I haven't really told people that story because,
Hmm.
it sounds, I didn't even have an explanation for it, but it's really cool seeing some of your videos on that because I thought, oh my gosh, I've seen the orbs before.
Yeah, I think that's a lot more what people are witnessing, and they're expecting like what we've seen in movies and on science fiction shows on TV. Like people expect like they're going to see a flying saucer, some metal spaceship from another planet, but when they witness what looks like a living thing, like a ball of light or something that's actually interacting with them or can even read their thoughts, it's a whole other level. And it's funny because even in the movies, when you go back, like the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind with Steven Spielberg, that came out in the 1970s. And the very first scene in that movie starts with like the house being haunted, almost like a poltergeist, and the kids' toys coming alive and turning on, all this electrical energy in the house and the light bulbs flickering. And it's more like a ghost story, the whole first half of the movie. And then ultimately you realize it's these extra dimensional aliens on flying saucers that are coming and interacting with the scientific team up on the mountain. But the way that it affects the community is like everybody's house is haunted. And there's this missing piece, I think, in our culture where we don't understand or realize our connection and human consciousness's connection to this phenomena and the appearance of um, paranormal activity or like UFOs in the sky, what you saw, like this interactive ball of light, and where you're just like standing there staring at it. And I mean, I've experienced all those things too. And even the scientists and physicists that I work with, they all say that this phenomena is deeply connected to who we are and our consciousness. Like when you go out and look at them or look up at the stars at night, and you tune your mind to a certain way of thinking, that is like a form of meditation. Or if you're religious, you would say like it's like a form of prayer. Whether you mean to do it or not, you're like looking up at the sky and you're tuning your consciousness almost like you would tune a radio or a walkie-talkie to pick up certain signals. And then suddenly these entities or life forms that exist out there just out of our normal field of view, they pick up on that signal because they communicate in that wavelength. They communicate with telepathy and through consciousness, and they even operate their their machinery or technology that way. And so when you start to match their frequency, they notice you, and suddenly more and more people are seeing these UFOs and lights in the sky, and sometimes even feel like it follows them home or is in their house and things. And this is really just a parallel dimension that exists right alongside of us, that's always been there, that we see in all the ancient cultures. They drew it in petroglyphs and pictographs, all the ancient pyramid cultures. They understood all of this and were communicating with this other dimension constantly, like the spirit realm. And now we're just blind to it. We wake up every day, we go to work, and we're looking at our phones and watching movies on TV, and we're disconnected to these, the way that our consciousness works, and in the universe and in Mother Nature. And when you go out and look at the stars, so like when these drones are popping up in New Jersey, we got all these people going out looking up at the sky for the first time in maybe their whole lives, and they're expecting to see something there, and then lo and behold, they get in the right mindset with other people in the community, and then these orbs are appearing, these UFO and strange phenomena are appearing. And when they appear in the sky, it's almost like it knows their thoughts. And when they start to look at it, start to film it, they flicker, interact, and then they move, disappear, change shape. And I think that as more people become aware of how they're playing a part in that, the more it's going to happen. So it's kind of fascinating. So who knows, like if even what you saw just like was the right formula of you going outside at the right time and being right there, and then you tuned in just right for it to appear for you. But it's not a hallucination. It's a whole other thing when you can film it and it's really there.
The cool thing about what you just said is it's even deeper than me just being outside. I had been reading a book called Letters to a Starseed, and it was talking about
Mm.
calling in your soul family. And there was like, actually, it sounds crazy. There's actually these things you can read out loud. They like calling in, the people that are connected to you on a soul level. And then I'm sitting out on my balcony and I see this and I was like, holy shit, is that them?
That's
And so
100% it.
that's insane. So when hearing you say that, I was like, oh wow, I was tuning into the frequency. And then thinking of, as you were talking, like it was far away. And as the more I stared at it, it came closer to me. So I'm like, felt me looking at it. No wonder that it kept coming so much closer.
Yeah,
Beautiful
100%.
explanation.
That's exactly how it works. In fact, it is such a thing and a real thing that it goes all the way back. We've talked about remote viewing and how that works, and it's really comes down to those same principles. When you were reading that book and it was talking about making contact with your soul family, indigenous Native American people, they saw it exactly the same way, that they were the star people, and those were like the souls of people just like you and I, who had passed on and who had transcended to become these like ascended masters or star people. And they're like our ancestors or family. And in some quantum sense, they also believe that they're you, that these are versions of yourself from the future that already are capable of time travel and things. And they also will appear and help bring you along and nurture you along your path through all the different lives of reality that you're living. And so that it's also you coming from the future to sort of guide you along and confirm things to you, which is really cool. Uh, Science fiction and movies, they want to make it out like they're alien bugs that are going to come and abduct you. All of my experiences, while some of them can feel that way, ultimately, when you look back at the lessons and the things and that you learn from those encounters, they're all like family from alternate parallel dimensions and things that are guiding you along a journey or a path, and they're teaching you things.
What's
And
an
so,
experience? What's the craziest experience? Let's dive into that. What's your crazy experience like that?
well, for me, my first abduction experience happened when I was like 11 years old. And I was with a friend over at a friend's house during a sleepover. And his parents were out of town, and so were mine for like some work convention. And we didn't want to like stay at home alone. So I went over to his house to spend the night. And we just like hung out and were goofing around, talking about girls and stuff. And then when it was time to go to bed, we like got sleeping bags and went down in the basement in this lower living room area to go to sleep. And we were talking, and he fell asleep. And then it was like right as I was falling asleep, this big like burst of wind came through the room, like from head to toe through the room. And I thought someone had like flung a window or a door open or something happened. So I like woke up and was looking around, and my friend was already sitting upright, and he was like trying to scream like he was scared. And long story short, there was like this big tunnel that had opened up in the wall of the bedroom and down the hallway, where instead of the wall and the hallway, it was like a giant vortex, like a dark tunnel that went in and down, like a tunnel going down. And there was two short entities that looked kind of like what you would call like little alien grays, but these actually had noses and ears. They looked more like a little elf or like a goblin or something, like little creatures. And there was two of them, and then a third one that was taller than the other two. And as crazy as it sounds, the third one actually had a stick in its hand, like a magic wand, like it was holding like a wand. So it was totally like something you'd hear out of like Irish folklore or something, like the Fae, like some goblins or elves that would come out of the ground and take you. It was more like that kind of a scenario. And I've even talked to people, like I've gone to Norway and met people from Ireland and from Germany and all around there. And when I've shared that story with them, they're way more open to it. Like, oh, the Fae, like, oh, they were like the Ents or the elf people, the goblins, the fairy folk, like it was normal for them. But here it's very strange. It's really weird to say
I,
that. But
I think it's so cool what you just described about how, so you shared with me that growing up, your dad was really fascinated by the paranormal. So your whole life, you have believed in the existence, and believing in the existence means you're tuning into that frequency. So how many little kids, I feel like all of us as a kid had some weird moment where we saw something in our peripheral, or we saw something in the hallway, we ran off screaming scared, and then a parent or whatever said, oh, you didn't see anything.
right,
However, the fact that it was just normalized for you that there are the unexplainable things, and other beings in our all around us. You're just looking at it. I mean, did you feel fear when you saw it?
oh yeah, yeah. I was definitely afraid. My whole childhood, I kind of had misconceptions about it. Like growing up, I was brought up in the Mormon church, so my interpretation of it was just like, oh, these were evil spirits or like demons coming to torment me because I was a bad kid. Maybe I had done something wrong, and so these goblins were coming to take me and punish me or something, like a warning. And really now, like since I'm not a part of any organized religion, and I've gone and learned from Native American friends and studied more of my ancestral heritage and all of that stuff, and found my own spiritual path, I look at all of that now like those experiences helped me sort of look at the way I was being raised and how I was being taught, and helped me overcome those prejudices. So when, instead of looking at all those encounters like, oh, these are evil demons coming to torment me because I'm a bad kid, I've been able through those experiences to be like, oh no, these are, like you said, these are like my interdimensional family, and they're coming to take me on a family reunion, or to take me on a trip somewhere to their version of Disneyland, or like their version of the library to go learn some things or whatever. But just because they appear a particular way to me, while it was scary at the time, as I've matured and I've understood my culture and where some of those images and entities might come from and what they're up to, I'm not as afraid of it anymore. And I definitely don't classify them as like demons or evil spirits or whatever. But yeah, they're just like, to me, they're like family or cousins or whatever that sometimes jump into my timeline because they need to do something or need me to go with them to do something. And as I've grown into that, that's more deliberate on my part rather than being basically abducted. Now I actually do the remote viewing and the meditation, the gateway protocol. I do the actual meditations and things to intentionally uh, go into those realms and explore those realms and to communicate with them, rather than just like waking up in the night and there's like a shadowy figure in the corner of the room and then I have to deal with it. So, I mean, that still happens. And I want to say, like, I know that this all sounds like folklore and science fiction, but I'm actually part of phase 2 of a whole research program and project that's going on with physicists and engineers that are connected all the way to the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., where we're actually capturing the proof and the data when these interactions happen. So, like, even when I'm asleep in my own bed at night, if I have an encounter where I wake up and it's like there's someone standing in the corner of the room, and then I have this whole visionary experience, I actually have the scientific sensors and data collectors in my house that are live tracking that occurrence. And
The
then,
MUPA system, right? Is that?
yeah, and
Yeah.
I just got my upgraded unit in the mail yesterday. So this is the new MUPA system.
Oh, that's so
Um, it's just a box with a touch screen, but this actually has 15 different advanced systems in it. So it collects the infrasound, the electromagnetic frequencies, the radio frequencies, the atmospheric data. It captures the gamma radiation, the accelerometer, like it can even tell if there's like a small earthquake. It has 15 different clusters of sensors all in that box. And then it's connected to the internet and a website that these doctors that go all the way back to Washington and the Pentagon, they actually collect that data and take that as evidence for contact with these entities and the phenomena. So when I wake up at night and I see a shadow figure in the corner of the room, or I feel like I've been taken on a UFO somewhere, I can wake up in the morning, get on the website, and the sensors actually caught the data that, like, yeah, at exactly 3:15 in the morning, there's a huge spike in the electromagnetic field. The microwaves went way off the chart. The gamma radiation spiked. And then there was like a gap for like an hour and a half where the sensor captured all this bizarre quantum data that shouldn't be there, that is not in my house or in my community. It doesn't exist. All of a sudden the sensor catches that, and then I wake up in the morning like, wow, I had a crazy dream. And I type my journal in, and they can match that up with what the sensor captured to prove that something really occurred. It's not just imaginary. Something's really happening to people.
Would you say that most people are having these types of experiences but the level of openness determines whether or not they classify it as that or not. Like most people have a weird moment in the middle of the night and they're like, oh, they just brush it off.
For sure. I think that there's certain levels to it of awareness. And definitely there are certain people that their brain is physiologically wired a little bit different. And that doesn't make them special or anything. But I think that everybody at a certain level does have some awareness. What I mean by that is, like, even as you go throughout your day to day, most people are daydreaming, you're visualizing other things, you're having a memory where you're thinking about the past. And most of the time, that's just kind of like a mental fog, or like an overlay, like a movie playing in the background, like a song that's stuck in your head that's kind of meaningless. But when you really train, like if you decided, I'm going to be like a Jedi in Star Wars, I'm going to actually train my thoughts. I'm going to go internal and become very aware of all of that. And I'm going to master it so that instead of just daydreaming because a song is stuck in my head, I'm going to have a vision library with doors and rooms and tools where I go in and there's a box over here that is capable of doing this. And there's a control panel over here that does this. And there's a doorway I can step through that takes me to this other timeline. And instead you shape your internal mind and those visualizations into a realm that's full of tools and doorways and things that you can use to where you become a master of your own internal realms. Then you start to step through those doorways and explore them and go deeper and deeper into the levels of your own subconscious. And you realize that your consciousness is connected to this whole outer world and what you're experiencing, and the paranormal and the UFOs and all of that. So I think it is just depending on how much you pay attention to it, and how much you train or focus. And some people are actually wired a little bit different, where you don't even intend on it. You don't mean to. Maybe you have a little spicy autism or something going on. Have a little
Neurodivergent brains.
right. And if you've listened to that Telepathy Tapes podcast, they talk about children that have autism are very telepathically connected, and they're starting to prove that scientifically. And I think we all have that, just at different levels of awareness. And some people, because of disability or their brains are wired different, are just going to be tuned to that signal more and more aware of it. But I think it's a change in our society now that we're being more accepting and realizing that this is the case. Instead of just trying to feed people who are different, people who have schizophrenia or might have different mental acuities or abilities of communication, we don't have to just stick them in a home or pump them full of pills. We're starting to realize, wow, their antenna is wired differently to perceive reality in these different dimensions. They have gifts, yeah, and I think we're gonna wake up to that awareness in our
And that's
society.
duality, right? Like every gift has its drawbacks to it or what have you. And then also, we live in a society that's built for people whose brains function a certain way. So we consider it a disability when someone's brain functions differently. That makes a lot of sense about people with neurodivergent brains, or what we call ADHD, autism, like that they would be more attuned to their surroundings. I mean, pattern recognition, like energy
Mhm.
reading, all of those things.
Yeah, and even like Dr. Jim Segala that I work with, who builds those MUPAs, those modular unidentified phenomena alert system. That's what MUPA stands for. He builds those. His colleagues are Dr. Gary Nolan, Dr. Kit Green, or Christopher Green. He works with a lot of neurologists and physicians and physicists. And like Dr. Gary Nolan, he's been key out of Stanford Research Institute at actually figuring out that people who have had experiences with UFOs or paranormal encounters actually leaves tracers and markers in the brain, and they have a name for it called interference syndrome. So it's not always a positive thing. There's actually like tracers and markers in the brain. They can do an MRI and say, hey, this guy's not lying. He's encountered something that has exotic radiation that actually left lesions on parts of the brain. And they would consider that like a radiation damage that isn't like a great thing or a positive thing, but it is also a physical marker, like a fingerprint, that is proof that something paranormal happened to this individual that leaves a medical trace that's actual provable in court, or that could be taken back to the government to say, look, this guy who's claiming that he's seen UFOs or been taken on board them, not only are we capturing the proof with the sensors, but we have his story and other people's, but then we can even go into the tissues of his brain and see lesions there in certain parts of the brain, like he was affected with some kind of exotic radiation we can't explain. And so now the science and the technology, we're being able to prove that that people that are having these encounters they're not just faking it. Some of them are, obviously, a lot of them, they just want attention, like they're special and things. But for real experiencers, it is getting to the point where it's provable that we're not alone, that these phenomena are real. That when you wake up and you might think that something's there, you feel the spiritual intuition or deja vu, right? When you're thinking about somebody there, they text you or they call. All those things we're starting to prove are real phenomena that are showing that we as humans are a lot more than what we thought. We're not just these meat and bones walking around in a physical reality disconnected from each other, but our consciousness actually extends as a field through all of the earth and through all of the cosmos in these strange and exotic ways, and we're a lot more connected than we've been taught.
I was reading about how we are all telepathically connected, and then that example of you think of someone and they call you, but it's the context. So when we get these little nudges to reach out to someone, or we experience these synchronicities, we just often brush it off as nothing, when really that's us telepathically connecting with one another in our different energetic fields, which is, something your colleague said about human beings are extremely perceptive, have extrasensory abilities, but are the worst reporters because we are conditioned to think a certain way. So our brain builds inaccurate context around what happens to us. And so we don't explain it. So it was interesting what he was saying about when people are describing a experience, having to read between the lines in a sense of what that could have been.
100%. Like we get up every morning, and as soon as you open your eyes, we're then living in the physical body. So you're looking through your eyes and you're listening through your ears, and you have the sensory of your skin and your hands and everything. And that kind of merges into just like who you are. I am me, and I'm going through my life. And everything in your environment is like icons on the computer, like on the desktop. So you have, your coffee is like, oh, I'm going to go +5 energy for the day. And so you go over, and we have these physical objects and items and things that we go and interact with is your life. It's your whole reality. But we don't stop to realize that that pot of coffee and the cup of coffee and the refrigerator, the floor that you're walking on, and everything is all happening through those perceptions of the eyes, these little pinholes in the eyes and these vibrations in the ear, that ultimately is just energy. It's just vibrating frequencies and energy that's going through as light and vibrating sound and feeling like warmth and pressure that we interpret into a coffee pot, that you pick up a cup of coffee and actually drink it. And that's like our whole physical reality operates that way. But when you get back underneath that surface through into the non-physical, it's basically like going into the code of the computer. So instead of just seeing all the different icons on the screen of the computer, just like you have apps on your phone, there's the coffee pot, there's the fridge, there's my shoes, there's my bed. Like, instead of seeing physical reality as actual physical objects, you go into that consciousness layer and realize all of this is me witnessing it. Everything, the bed, the coffee, all of that is the I am, the me, as the seer, the observer, the experiencer, the witness. It's all really a big mirror of me experiencing myself and me experiencing uh, relationships and other people and all this stuff. And it's even deeper, like when you go into a dream at night. So when you fall asleep at night and you have a dream, you might totally believe that you're in a house or you're out on the street and you're talking to people, and you're convinced that there's the ground and the sky and another person and there's a house. But ultimately, all of that that's happening in the dream is really made of your own psychic energy. It's all made of you, just perceiving and witnessing. It's just your energy turned inside out into a whole room of people that you talk to. And so as you go to sleep and you go into dream states, you dip into that non-physical realm that just is pure consciousness and energy at the deepest sense. And we wake up in the morning and just say, that was a weird dream. And we don't even consider anything as being real, as a real place, that you are actually somewhere. And you don't even wake up and consider that even this right now, even as we're talking through the computer, is the same thing. It's still all you witnessing it. It's all still made of consciousness at an underlying layer. So anyway, these phenomena like remote viewing and out of body travel and the sensors and all of that is just all of us coming to terms with who we really are and how connected we really are and how reality really is like a dream that we're all creating as we go with our own emotions and our own thoughts. And it's kind of a scary thing to wake up to, but I think that's where we're headed, and that's going to explain all of this strange phenomena that's going on.
So many things you just said. Like, that's why our inner reality and subconscious beliefs create our outer reality. And
Yes.
I really like what you were saying about everything that we see. What is it? What is the percentage of our reticular? We're only seeing like what percentage of what's actually there because our brain can
Well,
only visualize so much of it.
according to neurologist Donald Hoffman, he wrote a whole book called The Case Against Reality. He says 0%. He says the amount of reality that you're actually perceiving that is true is 0%. He said, for example, like if a centipede with 100 legs or 1,000 legs, if it had to stop and think about every leg when it took a step and it had to control that, it would just curl up and die, right? So everything has evolved to exist at a very simple user interface. So he basically says that statistically, the math of reality and evolution says that what you're seeing is 100% not true. Like when you
Subjective reality.
so, yeah, the reality that you think that you're existing in is actually an illusion or like a dream that consciousness is projecting just so that you can survive, just like that centipede. Like if you had to stop and think about how to digest your food every time you took a bite of food, and you had to sit and think about every molecule of your body and how to perform that function, you wouldn't be able to do it. You have to just let go of all of that. It becomes just what we call autonomous function. So like how your ears can hear and how your lungs breathe and how your heart beats on its own, how your food digests, even how your eyes work to focus in and out when it's bright or dark or whatever. Really, you don't have any say over any of that. It all happens on its own. It all happens completely by itself, on its own, like this autonomous function. And that is like the clue that who you actually are and what you're perceiving and what you think is going on is 100% and a dream. It's an illusion. It can't be real, because if it was real and you were actually seeing what was going on, you wouldn't be able to function. You wouldn't be able to control any of that at that finer detailed level. And so you have to put all of that in a blind spot of the subconscious and just have, oh, I'm just going to drink a cup of coffee, and you just can't process it all. It's just impossible.
Which is why psychedelics experiences can be so difficult
Mm.
because, for one thing, if you, there are lots of people that have experimented with mushrooms, for example. The colors that you start to see, that's not you tripping. There just actually is more than what you normally see in your baseline state, and so it can become overwhelming, the things that you see. It can become overwhelming, the things that you feel, because of what you just said.
Yeah, you can see, like, if you take a lot of mushrooms or a lot of psychedelics, you'll perceive those things that you thought were physical reality and that what everything was made of merge into basically just becoming light or frequency or energy, and that everything isn't as solid as you thought. And even people that you're talking to might completely melt into the background, and you realize there's just like the wall and the couch, and where I thought my friend was is now talking to me over there, but there's nobody really there. It's just an illusion of the wall and them. And same when you go out and look at the stars or at different distant objects and things, that sense of how far away things are and what they're actually made of, and the sense that stuff that you thought was non-living or inanimate, like a rock or things like a tree, suddenly you realize how alive reality actually is, and how everything is like a dream and is all connected like this waveform of energy. Yeah.
Which goes with the theory of panpsychism, the idea that, to some extent, everything, not just living things, has some sort of consciousness.
Yeah. I think so. And I think it goes back to also that idea of, like, ultimately everything is you perceiving it and you as the witness seeing it. And so ultimately, that paradox, it doesn't matter if it's really conscious or alive. You, as the perceiver and the witness of it, are the one there experiencing it, making it alive. And that is a conscious living thing. So, for example, like the philosopher Carl Jung, he used to do these meditations even as a little kid, where he would go out in his backyard and he would sit on a boulder, like a big rock in the backyard, and he would meditate and he would visualize himself. This is just like remote viewing. He would sit on the rock and he would visualize himself as if like he was a ghost outside of his own body. And he would say, "Oh, I am a little boy sitting on a rock." And he would look at himself from around outside of himself. And then he would say, "Oh, I am a rock and a little boy is sitting on top of me." And he would project his consciousness into the rock that he was sitting on. And he would swear that you could taste what the rock could taste. You could smell the soil that the rock was sitting in. You could feel how long it's been there and how deep it went in the earth. And then he would extend that to be like, "Oh, I am the hillside with many rocks, and there is a little boy sitting on top of one." And then he would become the whole valley and like the whole sky. And really, that is just a version of out of body travel. And they teach
Your
versions. Yeah.
consciousness onto something else.
Yeah. You change your point of view from being inside your skull and looking through your eyes to the perspective of that thing over there. It's the same thing as Native Americans doing, utilizing spirit animals, where they would project their consciousness into an eagle or a coyote or something like that in these meditations and spiritual visions. And then they would come out of the dream and they would know where to go hunt or where to go get food. It was like a whole psychic relationship with the environment. And we've lost touch with that, and so we feel like we're just rediscovering this, and it's all science fiction to us now, but it's been who we are this whole time.
Isn't that fascinating that ancient cultures, this was just the norm to them, and then at some point it all became this, you know, uh, like you said, these science fictional concepts. And so it's really fascinating to me, to see people like yourself that are finding ways to quantify and create scientific data to prove, which kind of similar to what Dr. Joe Dispenza is doing with his work. The MUPA system, I assume that that's not something anybody can buy at this point.
It is now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the whole for the last like 2 years, uh, Dr. Segala has been getting it to where it can be used for civilian use, because it was a whole big system that you had to take like in the back of a truck, like for it had cameras and a whole bunch of stuff. And now we're working on it down to where you can actually even wear it as a watch. That's the next model, is going to be like a Fitbit watch that you can wear. So you can take it camping or up to the mountains where you see the UFO or whatever. But right now, this is the newest model is this one. And I just barely got the new model, this one. But yeah, I have a Patreon page that we're doing it, and they're $500. You can get one, and it has all 15 of the sensors, and then you could become a part of the team. So that's the idea. Is we have 100 people now that are in the study, and they're all voluntarily saying, "Yep, I'm having experiences." They get on and type in the journal entries, and then it's just known, like, don't buy one and plug it in unless you want to be part of the study.
Because
But
it'll send the data to the data is all being collected for any of them that are sent. Well, I'll
yeah,
definitely
and they
link.
keep it all like under HIPAA regulations and everything. Like Dr. Segala, he doesn't release anything, he doesn't share anything with me. But if you wanted to, like, I'm public to the fact that, like, if you join the team, you can even access my sensor in my house to see what's going on and read all of my journal entries. I put all of my stuff out as public. But yeah, there is a chance that, like, if you are a real experiencer, that data is compiled and collected into what will become phase 2 of the modular study, and Dr. Segala is going to be taking that back to the Pentagon and back to Washington to report on the encounters. Yeah.
It's incredible. It would. You were talking about a model of it as a Fitbit. Wouldn't it be amazing to be able to monitor your own frequency? Because when you
Yeah.
talk about everything being energy, when we are operating or tuning into a higher frequency, we are magnetizing other opportunities, people, money is a frequency. We're magnetizing other high frequency things to us, and then on the flip side of that, if you're operating at a low frequency, you're magnetizing low frequency experiences and people and things to yourself, like flat tire or something always going wrong, whatever. So wouldn't that be cool to be able to monitor your own frequency?
Yeah. And even to be able to do legitimate measured experiments, to where maybe you don't have a house that's like it's haunted, or you've never seen a UFO, but you've always felt intuitive, you've always felt like you've had this telepathic intuition, or maybe you do have a nonverbal autistic child and you're wondering if they have some kind of a strange telepathy or whatever. The MUPA sensor can even capture that strange data, where we've started doing experiments where I will do the gateway protocol or out of body travel meditations, where I'm completely in another part of my house with the door closed, and I'm doing a meditation, and I'm recording, and I have the website up monitoring the MUPA sensor. And when I'm doing the meditation, I'm visualizing that I'm actually at the sensor and I'm affecting it, like I'm putting energy into it. I'm climbing around inside and I'm pushing the gamma sensor. And then I can come out of the meditation, pull up the website, and see that I actually, with my mind, affected the data. And that's groundbreaking. I mean, as we collect that data and prove it, that's literally proving that you can change your physical reality outside your body just with your thoughts, just with the power of your mind and focusing in a meditation. You can actually change gamma signatures and microwave energy, potentially flip a switch, or even just affect reality around you. That's always been science fiction. That's magic. To be able to, like, that's like what Jedis do, knock things over with their mind. But these sensors, you can even do those experiments with them. And it's really cool. It's not some gimmick pseudoscience Ghostbusters thing off of Amazon. It's actually built by real physicists and engineers that are collecting the data legitimately.
And I think that what exciting times that we live in where that data is being collected. Like I said, it reminds me of the work that Dr. Joe Dispenza is using. Like, this is very real. People can heal themselves with their mind. And so we're going to actually collect the data to show the changes in, people with chronic illness, how it's changing when they come into these meditations, and bringing all these people together. I have a friend that went, and she said that people that sign up to be healed and other people sign up to be the healers, and they all project that healing energy onto the ill person, the chronically ill person, and then there's actual changes in their medical data afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. It has massive implications for being able to actually have science suddenly look back through time and see where, like we talked about, like ancient indigenous cultures got it right, and how that can inform even like modern religions. Like I said, I was brought up and raised as a Mormon, and there's definitely a belief of like laying on of hands with sacred oil to heal people and to pray for people and to bless people, and they even do prayer circles in the temple to try and heal the sick and things like that. But the idea of, instead of just guessing through our cultures and through mythology, to actually have science to back up how it works and how we actually do it, could change everything. Like, imagine how your life would change if you went to work with your coworkers and you realized my thoughts and emotions are actually affecting these people around me. Like, I'm literally resonating off, bleeding off, and I'm like, my attitude is actually contagious, and it's contagious to the whole environment, even the plants and even the ground under my feet. When we realize and have more self-awareness and self accountability over that, I think it will raise humanity to a higher level. We'll realize, like, we can't just go around all day being grumpy and being negative and hating the world and hating our lives. Like, we're literally building train tracks ahead of us that are going to go off a cliff if we keep doing that. We have to literally look out at everybody and realize that it's all us, and we're all sharing this big cosmic dream together, and we're all seeing reflections of ourselves in each other in this magical way, and we are 100% connected through our consciousness. And every thought that you have, and when you're daydreaming about somebody and thinking about them, keep it positive. Keep it positive, because the evidence and the science is showing that when you think those thoughts and have those imaginations, that it actually is affecting the world, and you are uh, influencing other people and could be affecting their day. And that can be spooky or exciting, depending on what kind of a person you are.
Well, that's a interesting thing to me about the phenomena of prayer. I grew up in I spoke about this in previous episodes of, I guess you would call it Southern Baptist. People would speak in tongues, and there was everything but the snakes.
Yeah.
And so, I became agnostic as an adult, and there was a lot of fear based kind of themes to the religion that I was raised in. So as an adult, I had a lot of religious trauma and was very agnostic. And it's been pretty amazing for me in my spiritual journey. And also, I have a very analytical mind, which is why I love hearing about all the connections between like ancient cultures and religion and modern science, and the unexplained. But prayer is exactly what you were talking about your mental energy. Our mental energy is the most powerful tool that we have, which I think that society collectively has forgotten. And what is prayer?
Right.
Prayer is focusing energy towards something. It's setting an intention. What is a ritual? When people perform rituals, a ritual is just solidifying an intention. And what is prayer? Prayer is an intention, and sending energy in a certain direction. So that really like reframed my earlier conditioned thoughts around what prayer is.
Right. Me too. Like I started to understand when I explored a lot of this and was realizing how it really works is that on the one hand, there definitely is something real to that idea of prayer and the concept of it. But I also, on the other hand, realized in a lot of ways how I was taught kind of how to do it wrong. And like a lot of the way that I was praying or was taught to pray was a lot of like asking, like, please help me with this. And can you just do this? And it's a lot of, to be honest, like begging or neediness or hoping. And I was really taught like, just keep up your hope and keep up your faith. And I didn't realize that the way that I was projecting out hoping and hoping was really like begging and needing and lacking. And ultimately, when you understand how manifestation works and how consciousness works in a relationship with reality, that if you're just projecting out needing and lacking and wanting, you're basically going to just continue to suffer and struggle. Like real faith and what real prayer is like is knowing that the universe has got it right, knowing that if there is a God, they've got your back, knowing 100% without any doubt that nothing could be out of place. So why are you worried? So it's basically prayer should just be a celebration. Like, I'm excited for today. Thanks for all of this. Today's going to be awesome. And if things go different, I'm going to learn from it and move on. And like, we can learn from this. That's why I was saying, like, I feel like even religion and everything can be informed by the science, and the science from the religion and the spirituality and the metaphysics, and all of this can look at each other and see where we've been getting it wrong, and we can elevate into this new kind of renaissance where the people who want to go to church and be spiritual actually get results and can actually learn something that helps them instead of just a bunch of mythology and fear and guilt and shame. They realize this is all about your energy and positivity. And that's the same thing these people are saying. And that's what the science backs up. And that's what reality is too, and how physics works. And then I think that's where we're headed. And we're just going through the growing pains of figuring that out.
I used to speak, and when I worked in the education system, I presented a lot on the concept of cognitive bias.
Mm.
And so, getting into these principles of manifestation, that's what cognitive bias is. Your brain has a belief, a subconscious belief. It is going to look for things that support that belief, period. So if you have this idea that you are in lack, that you are without, that you don't have money, you don't have abundance, you don't have love, you don't have opportunities, and you're praying for them, you're just proving that you believe that you're without. So your brain is just going to look for things to prove that to you, to further prove that to you. So that's that mirror that, okay, if this is what you think that you're without, then we're just going to show you all the ways that you're without it.
Yeah, and it's just like if you're just tuning to different stations on a radio or whatever. If your mode and approach to praying or manifestation in your life and your meditation is all that like, please bring me money, please, please, please. And if it is that negative energy of lacking and needing and not having it, then that's what reality is just going to keep reflecting back on you. And it's going to feel like a struggle and like a paradox the whole time. When really at the core underneath all that, you just have to really actually trust. It's more of like a surrendering and a really trusting and a celebrating as you go forward. And then, and so when you feel like there is something lacking, it's just your own misunderstanding. And that's the same way that even the remote viewing, the out of body travel, when you start practicing lucid dreaming training, where you're in a dream and you become aware that you're in a dream, but don't wake up and you stay in the dream, that completely functions in the same way as manifestation in the real world, where you're in a dream, suddenly you look around and you're like, hang on, I think this is a dream. And it occurs to you, but then you're able to stay in the dream. Where the dream goes from there, whether you fly or whether you go to the crystal palace to learn the mysteries of the universe, all of that is up to your ability to control that intuition and to control your self-awareness that I am the one who creates this reality. I am in the crystal palace and I am with my ancestors teaching me across quantum time. And your ability to keep that focus is 100% up to you. As soon as you're lucid dreaming and you start drifting off, like, hey, what's that over there? You immediately forget and you're like sucked back in the dream and believe that it's real again and have no control. And it's kind of the same in day-to-day life. It's like you get up, just start paying your bills and trying to go through life, and you got to get all your different chores done throughout the day. And we really, really are convinced that it's real. And we forget how much of it is created by our own thoughts and energy and intuition. And we're manifesting all this as we go together.
So
And
lack of awareness is really will just have you functioning like an NPC.
yeah. And what meditation is bringing you back to presence, back to that lucid awareness of this is here I am now. This is where I am. And you're not thinking about the future. You're not thinking about the past. You might not even be thinking thoughts in English. You're just suspended in the present moment. And that becomes like this Zen garden where and you feel like, I haven't been here forever, right? It feels like, wow, because you're always thinking about the future and you're always dwelling on the past. And when you do actual transcendental meditation, it brings you right to now, right to the here and now.
What
And then
is your protocol for that?
it's all just the self-awareness of the thoughts. For me, it's when you suddenly become aware of who's chattering in my head. you know I'm always having this conversation in my mind, and maybe not everybody's the same, but like, even when I'm just getting ready in the morning, I'm having like, what shoes should I wear? Should I put on this shirt? Should I put on that shirt? What do I got to do today? And I'm having this whole internal dialogue chattering inside my mind, and it just so happens to be in English, which is a language that was taught to me at school and by my parents. It's not really who I was as a child, right? So like, what I try to do in meditation is like go back through like all of those thought processes, from daydreaming and visualizing to all that chatter in English. And I just come back to right now, and I just look at what's here, and I just pay attention to the sound or the feeling of the air in the room. And I try not to even think of like even a dialogue or words in my mind in a language. I try to become the space in between the words. Like, you have a thought right now, and then you have another thought here, and you might be daydreaming. I try to become the gap in the middle where there's just a nothing, like an openness. And in that space, there are doors and hallways and other places that you can explore, but you have to get really good at being here, you know?
It takes a lot of practice. I'm
Oh, yeah.
finding.
Oh, yeah. As soon as you're present, your mind is like, I'm doing it. It's working. And you're thinking again. You're
Yeah, I'm like,
chattering.
hey, come take me away.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
looking, I'm like, it's been 43 minutes. The first language was the language in our body. I mean, that was such a beautiful point. Our first language wasn't that language that was taught to us. It was what we felt in our body.
Yeah. When you go back and think about when you were a toddler, you know, it's all just like, no, 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 come on, come on. And it's just like they're saying little words, and, mommy and daddy and all that. But even before that, everybody has memories, and they're kind of like these from a child's perspective, and they're free of that. It's like a dream. You have memories of scenes and places and emotions, and they're really kind of magical memories or whatever. And when you think about it, there was no language in there. There wasn't even any English or any chatter in the mind. You're just free, being impressed upon by the environment. But meditation really feels like that. When you kind of get back to that sweet spot, it's like, whoa, it's like being in the womb of the universe again or something. You're not in all that mental chatter. There isn't this other Carl in there just yapping in the back of my head, having some voiceover dialogue all day. he goes quiet, and sometimes I even have to visualize, like like I imagine that there's a box and that voice goes in the box and I close the lid, or that voice goes into the wall and there's a volume knob and I turn it off and I just sit in quiet.
Sometimes
And
I visualize like a glass or like a wall in front of me, and the thoughts are words bouncing against the wall. Or I
mm,
visualize myself on top of like a building, and I'm far away from like the city, and over in the city, all my thoughts and all the busyness is over there, and I'm watching it from far away. So I'm at the visualization
me
phase
too.
myself.
I'll even visualize, like I'm just in complete void, like darkness, and all of that mental chatter and thoughts and everything are like a fire burning on a candle, and then I just try to go and blow the candle out, and I just let it go like smoke, and I just try to experience that calm. I think that's so healthy for us and for the mind to realize that all of that isn't who you are. All that chatter, all of your mind racing, the visualizing, and all that is just an energy that builds up that becomes like a stress or a pressure that makes you feel like, I gotta pay my bills, I gotta do this, and can make you mad at other people and everything. And when you realize it's literally just an energy, like a static that builds up and bounces around inside of you, and you can just calm it down back to zero. I think that's very powerful, very powerful. I wish I would have known that when I was growing up and facing scary situations and things, being able to stay calm.
It's a
And
rogue computer that with the volume all the way turned up, because like you said, we don't who where did those words come from? Someone taught them to us. Someone taught us that language. So what's beneath all that? That's a really great point.
and it's embedded into our society. Like, try to go to Walmart or go to Target or the store and walk around and try not to read any labels. Try not to read anything in English. Try to walk through and just go through like as like it's all just colors and visual, and you'll be amazed at how impossible it is. Because as soon as your head looks up, your eyes lock on, and you immediately are like Doritos, and your brain reads it, says it, visualize it, and you can almost taste the Doritos in your mouth. I mean, on our world is embedded like that, so infiltrated to where you can't hardly function. You're looking at your phone or walking through the store, and it's just these messages locked in. And that's why you have these theories like we're in the Matrix or we're in like the Truman Show. We're following just rows and waves of programming to try and get us to consume and to live in this physical reality and locked in. Like, we need these products to survive and stuff. And really, meditation teaches you that all of that is again an energy in your head. Reading the labels and even looking at them is optional. It's all just that user interface of a dream or a hologram that is not something that you have to have. It's all optional. And ultimately, it's very draining. The more you go out into the world and you're just reading all those labels and all that consumerism and blasted with the radio and music and TV, as you get older, it's exhausting and you feel it take its toll on you. And all you want to do is go sit by the river. All you want to do is go sit by the lake and listen to or by the ocean and listen to the waves. That's why you see old people just sit at the park feeding birds, doing nothing, because they get it. They don't need all of that junk. you
What do
know.
you think it is about age and time that that creates this feeling where you're like, oh, this is all too much?
Yeah, I think that just like the physical world, including your body, over time give out on you. And I think that over time, they let you down and they fail you. And what is really true is that consistency of your presence and your attitude and spirit and awareness. And as you get older, I think it just becomes less about where you're going and what your body's doing. And it's more about that journey that you're having of connection, your relationships and the moments that you're having. And whether they're positive or sweet or not,
Realizing that all the things that you spent your youth chasing, that there was a lack of fulfillment there. So searching for
Yeah.
it somewhere else.
And as we get older, if you actually live to old age, your world physically just gets really small to where it's like you can't go that far. You got to stay close to the bathroom, so you're right. That's just the where you're stuck. So you kind of become close to where your physical needs are met. And so you realize that you're coming out of a cocoon, kind of like a butterfly, and that's going to be the next life. So when you leave this world, it becomes less reliable for you, and so you start to move on into that next one.
That's the really beautiful thing. So psychedelics have been my pathway to slowing down and being present in mindfulness, and really looking at feeling overstimulated by overconsumption, and looking for something different. But really, all of that is just an initiation. So we can reach that point. I mean, like you were saying, with meditation, with breath work, like some people have reached altered states of consciousness at will without using anything. And so I think everybody is different. I'm definitely one of those very busy brain, always going. So I'm really having to work hard, which is probably going against the point also when you try to work hard at meditation, but to slow my brain down. So it's interesting to me the way different people reach these states of consciousness in different ways. I wanted to ask you about, like, what is remote viewing like for you? Like, what is that process?
Yeah, everybody is going to be different and unique. There are definitely some like consistent truths, I think, that are underlying with how it works, and even the government's secret programs kind of discovered the same things. Like you're saying, they like a lot of the government researchers and secret projects that were trying to figure this stuff out, they started by going down into the Amazon rainforest and talking to shaman. And then they got into experimenting with different psychedelic compounds at different levels to see what they could do. And then that even transitioned from using psychedelics over into using different frequencies and radio tones. And that kind of developed into this whole like non-lethal directed energy systems that they use. And in the Gateway program, they'll use hemisync or binaural tones and audio frequencies and radio tones to try and balance out the different hemispheres of your brain. And I've done a lot of that stuff. And I can say that all of it, even the radio frequencies and the headsets you can put on or whatever they want to do, those are all just become like tools, or they're just sort of like like a totem or a little placebo that you can use to ultimately.
Amplifier,
What's that?
like an amplifier of
Yeah.
sorts.
So really, they're just like a trick that your subconscious needs to convince itself to do it on its own, ultimately. Like if that's what it takes, like for you to accept and to let go and surrender for the experience to occur, then that tool might be effective for you. It might be a meditation bowl where just the ringing sound of the bowl somehow suspends your thoughts enough that gives you the breakthrough to where you can experience it. And all you have to do is think about the ringing bowls. You don't actually have to use them. Now you can just visualize and imagine that you're using the singing bowls, and it does the same trick. And that can be the same, I think, for all of that. I think there's certain levels where, like, obviously taking psychedelics and stuff is going to trigger a physical reaction in your brain and your body that's going to push you off the edge. But maybe after you've done mushrooms a few times and you've experienced that, you will realize that you can go follow sort of Joe Dispenza's protocol or different gateway meditations, and you can go sit by a river in an ancient canyon and you could meditate at night and have the same experience, and you didn't have to take anything. And then you suddenly realize, like, okay, it doesn't really matter what little totem or little tool I used or whatever hurdle I I used to get there, they're all just like a doorway or a gateway that allowed me to step through or to have the experience. And I think anytime you get hung up on one, like this is the one that works or this is the best, um, then I think you're probably just getting too attached to one crutch, like it's going to be the breakthrough. Because
Okay.
ultimately, when you die or when you're dreaming or when you're in all these other places, even when you're in the psychedelic experience, you don't have the drug to fall back on. Your medicine bowls aren't there, or your singing bowls aren't there to help you. It's like none of those tools are going to be there when you're actually in some spirit dimension anyway. So it's going to come down to what you can do within your own consciousness and the tools you have there. So ultimately, whatever physical tools and devices or methods or drugs that you use in this physical reality, they're just like symbols that are to help your subconscious find the key within yourself. And once you find that key,
Actually happen and you can actually do it because
yeah,
everything is a projection of your own perceived reality.
totally. Yes. Once you unlock the door and you have the key, you don't need to go back and find the key every time. Just you can know that you have it and go down that path every time. But I think a lot of people just keep returning like hemisync or binaural tones is the way that it is. And ultimately you realize that once you've experienced enough, you don't need any of that. Uh, you could be sitting in a prison cell or up on an airplane or standing in line at the DMV trying to get your driver's license, and you can go there. You don't have to have the tools.
It's like you're somebody's lucky socks that they wear for every game. It's just something you projected onto that substance or that item.
Yep. Yeah,
Wow.
and ultimately that's everything. That can be a person's like tattoos, that can be the church they go to, the friends that they hang out with, the specific type of meditation method they use. Ultimately, they are the one. And when you die or when you actually go through into those dimensions and find yourself there, you can't take any of that stuff with you unless you know it, unless you can do it within yourself. It isn't going to help you there anyways. So ultimately those tools have got to be something that are a part of you.
That was a beautiful explanation of just explaining it as something to trick a placebo. It is a great way to describe that as something to make our subconscious, which believes we can't do something, thinks, oh, look at this thing outside of us, it can do it. So then we will then project that belief, and so it was. It's the same thing with like a belief in yourself or self-love, or all of that. We are love, we are abundance, we are all those things. It's literally your own mind that is telling you that you aren't. And easier said than done, I will say personally, but it's an incredible thought to have. I mean, that is the reality. It's just undoing the programming.
Totally. Like if you might get a lot of guidance and strength from doing tarot readings or tarot cards. And some people are really into that. But I'm kind of like, that's awesome. And you could learn all of that. But unless you have a deck inside yourself, when you actually go into spirit realms or when you are faced with the phenomena for real, or you find yourself, maybe you die and you're still there, what are you going to do then if you don't have a deck of cards with you? You can't shuffle a deck to draw to see what's going on. You better have that deck inside you, and you might want to practice doing tarot readings inside the mind. If you think that you're doing Enochian magic with a crystal ball, or using the I Ching, or if you have any external methods, those are all meant to be internalized ultimately to where you can do them even when you're dreaming at night, or even when you're it doesn't matter whether you have them or not. You could be locked up in prison in a straitjacket in the loony bin, and you can do your tarot reading. You should
Sure.
have you should have that built within you. Yeah.
Yeah. So even like if you were, the cards all carry an energy, they symbolize something to you. So to even close your eyes and bring forth from your subconscious what card is resonant with you in that moment or in that situation. I am very new to them, but I use them. I've learned to use them as like, do words jump out at me? Do concepts, pictures jump out at me? What's jumping out at me? Because I'm still working on connecting with my own intuition on a deeper level. But, people will tell you that they'll use tarot cards for a while and then they won't need it because they've strengthened that relationship with their own internal guidance system.
Yeah, you get to the point to where somebody comes up to talk to you, and instead of pulling out the deck of cards and doing a tarot reading while they're talking to you about what they did that day, you are reading and you can sense their energy and you kind of know.
Yeah.
And it all just comes through as like a intuition and a clarity, and that deck of cards just becomes like a subconscious tool that you have in a whole library that you've developed inside yourself, that is just an energy now that is who you are. Yeah.
Gosh, that's beautiful. Carl, this has been the best part of my week. Conversations like this light up my soul. So that's what I try and remind myself, like, follow the spark, follow what you do, and you lose track of time. And this has been a great example of that. So thank you so much for being here today.
It's been awesome. It's been a great conversation. We'll have to do it again sometime for
I
sure.
would absolutely love that. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we close out?
I just think if anybody wants to check it out, go follow on YouTube. If you want to become a part of that MUPAS team, you can go over and follow on Patreon to see more there. I'm known by everywhere online as Carl Crusher because Andresen is hard to spell and it's hard to say. So I go by Carl Crusher. But yeah, just go check it out and we'll see you there.
All right. Thank you so much. And of course, I'm going to link everything, resources, how people can find all of your pages and your videos in the resources part of this section. And thank you so much, everybody. Until next time. Carl, I'm going to hit